Well, we made it. The final 2 episodes of Agatha All Along. And buckle up because the BS is going to come fast and furious in this one because it is now obvious that they were writing the series as they went along because the ending has very little connection to the thinly veiled story Agatha All Along was trying to tell. That and the complete lack of consistency or cohesion in the final 2 scripts. Now, episode 8, we open up with Asian Witch, now Beef Jerky Witch, realizing that she's dead and passing on thanks to Rio, who does her best to sound unsympathetic, but all she sounds like is cliche. And this opening scene has no bearing on the rest of the show. It means nothing, but it's there, and that's all we can say about that. And now, just to remind you, when we last left Agatha and Wiccan, Old Lady Witch was dead. The dreaded Salem 7, who posed no real threat to Agatha or anyone else, they were dead. I mean, talk about a completely wasted plot point. And African American Witch is very sad that Old Lady Witch, the woman she knew for less than 24 hours, didn't survive the last trial. And at this point, enter Rio and Agatha to have a very long conversation about nothing that we didn't already know, but a great line, quote, Wiccan is an abomination. I mean, no kidding. He's the fake spirit of a boy that was never actually born, but was just a magical illusion who body snatched the dead shell of a nice young Jewish boy who died in a car wreck. But I will say this, at least Wiccan is comic book accurate to a certain extent, and the actor is the most compelling character on the show, so you gotta give the flowers and the credit where it's due. But the real problem is this. Since death is only concerned with living and dead, and that's something she says specifically in her own words, why does she care so much about something that is neither alive or dead? Wiccan is not alive because he was never actually born. And he's not really dead because something that's not alive cannot actually die. The actual Billy Maximoff never existed. You know, the whole point that Doctor Strange is trying to get Wanda to understand during the Multiverse of Madness movie, the whole crux of the actual conflict of that whole film. But that is what we're going with here, so okie dokie, screw continuity in the Marvel Universe. And again, Death's biggest problem is that she cannot kill Wiccan. So Agatha makes a deal to deliver him at the end of the road in exchange for her powers and to be left to live a long, long time. Death agrees, but again, how to kill something that is not really alive in the first place? We still haven't addressed that issue, or what exactly does delivering Wiccan mean? Don't worry, you never actually get that question answered either. It's just the first of many examples of how these scripts are a complete mess. So Death just disappears and she goes off and waits at the end of the road. The other 3 remaining witches, actually 2 witches and a warlock, then reunite and continue walking to the last trial. And they trip over their shoes from episode 2. The road is a circle. But don't worry, Wiccan is there to put his shoes back on and start the final trial like he has every other trial. Each of them end up waking up in a body bag in a sterile metal room with fluorescent grow lights. Agatha tells them that they're in her basement, which makes no sense because her basement never looked like that. But still, it's convenient for the plot, and again, this script is a mess. More convenience, Agatha is the one that bound African American Witch 100 years ago, and she did it for, wait for it, the patriarchy. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen this episode, I'm not making this up. This is the reason why African American Witch doesn't have her powers. It's the patriarchy. So after finding this out, they end up breaking the binding that gives the African American Witch her power back, and then she just fucks off, leaving the other 2 to die. Guess we couldn't figure out how to end her story, so they went with that. Agatha then tells Wiccan to sit down so they can have an extended meditation session so they can find his brother Tommy and bring him back. But to do that, another child must be killed and then body snatched. But it's okay. We are told that no one loves this kid, no one will miss him, and he drowns in a public pool because kids are mean, and our 2 heroes are now child killers. And it seems to work because Wiccan disappears from the road. Yay, dead children win the day. Agatha, who's now all alone and desperate to get to the end of the witch's road and get her power back, she opens up her locket. There is a lock of hair from her own child inside, and conveniently enough, a dandelion wick that she uses to grow a flower using a single tear as time runs out. Agatha has now gone against what she promised to Rio and is now free from the road, so of course, Rio or Death is there to collect Agatha's soul. And surprise, we are magically back in Westview in Agatha's backyard. Here are where my questions really start. In the beginning, Rio could not kill Agatha. Why? It's unclear. Partly because she needed to wait until Agatha had her magical powers back, which she still doesn't at this point, but now Death can kill Agatha? Why? Unclear. At this point, whatever, let's move on. Death shatters the window and sends all the broken glass at Agatha, which does very little damage to Agatha. Normally that much shattered glass would slice and dice someone to ground beef, but not here. Agatha gets a sink, a hose, and some wooden boards thrown at her. She's then strangled, and then Death goes to stab her, which again is going to work now. Why? Again, not clear. However, don't worry, Wiccan appears and saves Agatha and lets the one person who's responsible for the death of his fake parents and his fake brother take his power to make her strong again. Look, maybe it's just me, but if a person killed my parents and my brother, helping them avoid death and giving them power would be the last thing on my list of things to do. But again, that's just me. Agatha is now in full form, and she and Rio battle it out. Death only wants one of them, and of course, Death cannot be defeated because she is Death, so Agatha tells Wiccan she will sacrifice herself to save him, then tells Death to kill Wiccan to save herself, all in a span of about 30 seconds. And we are left asking, who the hell greenlit this script? 30 seconds later after this, Wiccan telepathically talks to Agatha about her dead son, and this causes Agatha to change her mind again. Agatha then shoves her tongue down Rio's throat, the kiss of death, get it? Very clever, I get it. And then Agatha dies in slow motion because we're supposed to feel bad about this woman who is a mass murderer, or they just needed to pad the runtime. However, apparently she also makes great fertilizer because a bunch of purple flowers pop up in her space. Wiccan takes Agatha's locket, and Death is in full Katrina form, and why not? It's the Day of the Dead when this show aired in Mexico. Wiccan then walks in the middle of the day to his car in full view of all the citizens of Westview and drives off. He goes back home to his second set of fake parents, and although he's been missing for 24 hours and is bleeding from many places, they do nothing about it, and Wiccan just takes a shower. Now it's time for Jack Schaefer, the showrunner, to completely rip off The Usual Suspects twist ending because, why not? She's creatively bankrupt and is not a very good writer. Wiccan surveys all the things in his room, and it turns out Wiccan was behind it all along. He created the Witch's Road. It was all his illusion. This is absolutely stupid because this was never set up. In The Usual Suspects, you get clues throughout that Verbal Kint is lying and something is off. Here, it's just tacked on, lazy writing that feels made up in the last minute to cover for the fact that there was no real good story here to begin with. And by the way, Wiccan didn't have any real power until episode 7, but we are supposed to think he manifested an intricate and titanic illusion that fooled 5 other witches, including Death, a partially omnipotent being. This is the narrative they decided upon. Next we hear Agatha laughing, Wiccan turns around, he's frightened, and boom, end of episode. And I would say that this was the most boring episode of them all, but the final episode is yet to come, so let's get into it. Now, because the writers need to fill in some gaps, we open with Agatha running pregnant through a forest, and Rio shows up to take her baby because he's supposed to die in childbirth. But Agatha convinces Death to let her have some time with him, so Agatha leans in there and expels her child from the womb. No problem. Oh yeah, and by the way, it's like the 17th or 16th century at this point. The rest of the episode is spent with Agatha traveling from coven to coven, town to town, with her baby Nicholas Scratch, raising him and murdering a lot of people. Why? To take their power and feed. She teaches Nicholas how to lie, how to con, how to steal, and how to lure in prospective victims for her to eviscerate. Nothing like a mother's love. Nicholas asks her, "Mommy, why do you kill witches?" Agatha answers, "To survive." And the real answer is, your mother is a psychopath. But don't worry, the next logical thing to do after this life lesson is to sing the original colonial version of the song, The Witch's Road. And then the next few minutes are spent as Agatha and Nicholas rewrite the song and sing it to fit the plot. And then more singing as Nicholas and Agatha con an entire town for money. Then, for some reason, Nicholas runs off. Why? So Mommy doesn't kill more people. Later, to make it up to his mother, he promises that they can kill more witches tomorrow. Talk about modern day Disney family values being on display. Then, because it's so good, Agatha sings the song again. The two go to sleep that night. Death shows up and finally takes Nicholas. Agatha wakes up in the morning and is devastated because her son has passed. She buries him while singing the song, and I think the producers really want to sell more copies of this tune because talk about saturation marketing in this final episode. Agatha takes a lock of his hair and is then interrupted by another would-be witch looking for the Witch's Road. And since Agatha knows it's all bullshit because she and Nicholas made up the song in the first place, Agatha decides to pull an elaborate con on this witch and others continuously throughout time. She makes them sing the song again and again and again and again just to kill them and take their power. She does this for a few centuries. The Road never appears until, of course, Wiccan shows up in episode 2. It was him all along. He manifested the Road as an illusion, even though it's never explained how he actually does this. We then cut back to present day. Agatha is now a ghost. Wiccan comes to the realization that he is now a murderer because Old Lady Witch died, Mrs. Hart died, Asian Witch died. But again, I ask the question, how? If the Road was not real, then how does that work? How does imaginary poison kill Mrs. Hart in episode 3? How do imaginary swords kill Old Lady Witch? How does anything mean anything? And why doesn't death, and an omnipotent force in the universe, not realize that nothing was real that she herself was experiencing? Is death really that dumb? And how does African-American witch escape an imaginary road by tunneling through solid earth into Westview? If it wasn't real, wouldn't she just wake up in Agatha's basement? And the Salem 7, were they real? Does it even matter? This show went full Lincoln Osiris.
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
Now, Wiccan is upset about all of this. He drives back to Agatha's house and tries to perform a ritual to banish her ghost. We Catholics call it an exorcism, so Wiccan just needs a little bit of Jesus at this point and he'll be fine. He finds the door to the Witch's Road, which we were just told did not really exist, that it was all an illusion. Seriously, show, make up your mind. Agatha just wants her locket back. She doesn't want to go into the light because she does not want to face her son, which again makes no sense. It's the one thing that she wants most of all, to be with her son. Confused yet? Wiccan magically seals the door to the Witch's Road, the door in the road that never existed in the first place because it's an illusion. Then it wasn't really there, but now it's there, and now it's sealed, and again, none of this makes sense. And the show ends with one ghost of a mass murderer and one body-snatching mass murderer in training walking off into the distance hand in hand. And that's it. The series concludes. And doesn't it just make you highly anticipate all the other upcoming Marvel TV series to come? There's Ironheart, the story of a poor African-American girl being a better Iron Man than Tony Stark. Comic book accurate Wonder Man. I wonder if they're going to use that storyline where he has a romantic relationship with Miss Marvel. It is Disney after all. They seem to like that sort of thing. And Daredevil Born Again. I'm sure they will be able to improve upon the subpar Netflix series that made this character a household name in the mid-2010s. But back to Agatha, there is very little to say at this point about a show that was just bad. Plain bad. It never established a true narrative or true conflict to overcome or rules or guidelines that made the universe somehow work. It was a sloppy mess that hopefully marks the bottom of the barrel for Marvel Studios as they begin to shed activist writers and producers from its ranks in order to get back to what Disney used to be the king of, telling great stories. And that's it. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, thank you for watching. And remember, I'm still your reluctant gringo and from somewhere south of the border. Salud en a huevo.